Radio TV phono nut here, and what we have torn apart is an RCA Victor model 14BT1 battery operated AM tube radio from about 1939. This was one I got off of eBay a long time ago and just now pulling it off the pile. The cabinet's in pretty good shape except for this crack on the side. Now we'll look at the chassis and see what it looks like. Speaker, at least appearance-wise, looks in good shape. I haven't checked it electrically yet. This is a 4-tube set. We're missing one of the tubes, the detector and first audio tube. And it looks like at some point someone rigged up an adapter to allow a 7-pin miniature tube to be used in place of this octal tube here. Let's see what else. The battery cable is crumbling in the worst kind of way, and we'll need to replace that before we even think about applying power to this. And speaking of power, this requires 1.5 volts for the filament and 90 volts for the B+ voltage. And back when this radio was new, that voltage was obtained from a big battery pack that was probably about twice as big as the radio. Well, in today's world, that battery pack is no longer available, but we can make a battery pack using modern-day 9-volt batteries and a couple of D cells, or if you have one of the old-school battery eliminators that they made when rural electrification became available, you can operate it with one of those, or you can build a modern-day regulated power supply using solid-state components. So there are several options for powering these types of sets. Alright, looking at the back of the chassis here, I see this was serviced by a Sullivan radio company, and there is a date stamp there, but it's smudged and I can't make it out. Over here I see another stamp where it looks like someone worked on it, but I can't make that out either. And I see what looks like a very smudgy 1944 date stamp. This jack here is most likely a phonograph input jack, probably an add-on. This doesn't really look factory, but I will pull a schematic up before we're all said and done and see if the jack is shown on the schematic. You might ask yourself, why would somebody want a phonograph input on a battery-operated radio? There were no battery-operated phonographs back then. Well, back in the day, they actually made attachments that could be connected to a battery-operated radio, and these attachments used a spring-driven motor and then used a regular tone arm with a crystal pickup cartridge that could be plugged into your battery-operated radio that was so equipped with a phono plug, and that way you could have the ability to listen to records electronically without having to use a wind-up machine that used a mechanical reproducer. Here's something that makes this radio a little bit interesting, and it's the main reason I bought it in the first place. Most of these battery radios had some sort of indicator to allow the user to know that the set was turned on. Most of the time it was a mechanical indicator that would throw up a little red dot somewhere on the dial scale, and if somebody happened to walk by and notice the little red dot, they'd notice the radio had been left on. And that was very important because these radios were, for lack of a better term, battery hogs. And especially during World War II, the batteries for these radios were very hard to get, and you didn't want to leave one on unnecessarily and drain the battery. I know I had a friend who was raised during World War II, and he said they had a battery set on the farm, and he said his dad was very strict, and the only time that radio was allowed to be turned on was for about 5 or 10 minutes in the evening to get the war news. And he said it would have been the devil to pay had my daddy come in and caught any of us with the radio on just listening to music on it, because he said batteries were difficult to find, and he wanted to make sure that battery lasted for as long as possible. Well, this radio here doesn't use a mechanical indicator. It actually uses a neon lamp here that you can see. I believe it's a flashing neon lamp that they have connected to as part of a relaxation oscillator to make the bulb flash, so that ought to be interesting. Now, usually these battery radios are not too hard to get going. The only time it's really a problem is when some doofus connects the battery or the supply voltage up wrong, whether it be batteries or from an AC power supply. It ends up putting 90 volts on the tube filaments and burning out all of the tube filaments. So before we dive into this, we're going to do some checks and make sure the remaining tubes are okay, and check the continuity of our coils and transformers and see if they're okay. And if all that's good, we should be able to proceed with the restoration and shouldn't be faced with any unexpected surprises. I've got a similar RCA like this, only the one I have in the house up on my shelf has the mechanical battery indicator and no tone control. It's one that a friend had, and for years he kept telling me he wanted me to fix it for him, and I kept joking with him about, well, you ought to just give me that radio. And well, one day him and a friend brought it by for a visit, and he said, yeah, I brought you that radio. And I said, well, you gonna let me have it? You just gonna give it to me? And he thought for a second. He said, yeah, you can just have it. I said, are you sure? And he said, yeah, you know, just keep it. So I fixed it up, and then once I got it fixed up, way on down the road, he made mention that next time he came to see me, he wanted to pick up his radio. So you know, so it's sitting here for him. That was about 5 years ago, and I'm not going to get rid of it. If he ever wants it back, he can pick it up, but I don't like that kind of wishy-washiness. If I give you something, I'm not going to change my mind and tell you later that I want it back, or if there's any question about something, I'll make it quite clear if it's a gift or if I want it fixed or whatever. But you know, I don't play those kind of games. Okay, off camera, I went ahead and checked the continuity of the windings on the antenna coil, the oscillator coil, which is that thing right there, the two Iaf transformers, and we checked the speaker and the audio output transformer, and everything shows good. Now, the easiest way you can test a speaker that has a transformer on it, you can either take a battery and connect between your plate and B+ lead to the audio output transformer, or you can sometimes use your own meter scale, will provide enough of a voltage, but any one of those two methods can be used. And if you hear a click in the speaker, then that tells you automatically that both your output transformer and your speaker voice coil are functioning. So that's a quick and easy way to test a speaker and output transformer assembly without having to disconnect everything and test each individual component. So now we'll get it to the bench and replace that battery cable. Alright, here's the old battery cable removed, and you can tell by the soldering here that somebody has already messed with this. It was common for the wires to break off of these because there's really no convenient way for you to grab the actual plug and pull it out of the battery, so a lot of people just grab it by the wire and yank on it, and as tight fitting as these plugs were, it didn't take too many yanks for the wires to often break off, and then that's when people usually wired them wrong and blew all their tube filaments out. So we're going to have to check that too. And yeah, this is a rather long cable, so you know, you could hide the battery out of sight. You know, the lady of the house usually wasn't too keen on having an ugly battery showing. Now, a lot of the wooden cased farm radios were big enough where you could hide the battery inside the radio cabinet, but this is not one of those sets. I pulled up a schematic on the radio, and it does indeed have a phono jack showing here, so I suppose that's original. However, they have it running straight into the grid of the first audio tube, no radio phono switch or nothing, and no volume control either, since they're running straight into the grid. I guess the phono attachment had its own volume control on it, and you just use that, and you would have to set the tuner to a dead spot on the dial for minimum noise. That's really not even something I'll ever use on this, but I guess I'll keep it on there since it must have came with one. Okay, the wire colors we need are red, yellow, brown, and white, and we need stranded wires in that variety, and I have those in my wire stash, so we'll just go ahead and rewire this with the correct colors to make it more original. And the way we do this, we just simply heat up the solder here on the tip of each pin and then pull the wire out and stick our new wire in and solder it back up, and it's good to go. It's kind of tedious. It takes both hands to do it, but I've done it lots of times in the past. Okay, we have all four of the wires removed and 3 out of the 4 terminal center holes cleaned out here. And really the best way to do that is use a small metallic tool that solder won't stick to, like this very tiny screwdriver. Put it over the hole and then heat it up really good until the solder melts, and then jab it down in there, and then work it around a bunch of times, and then pull it out, and that'll usually clear it out sufficient enough to run the new wire through. Okay, here's the plug cleaned up and ready to go. I've sanded it down a little bit to make it it'll make it a little easier to unplug it and plug it in now, and the contacts will also make better connection now that all the rough tarnish crap is off of there. Alright, now let's find some stranded hookup wire of the appropriate colors and put them on the appropriate pins here and solder them up. Alright, here's our red wire, stripped, tinned, and stuck through the hole here. We'll now solder it in place, and then we'll cut off the excess. Now we want to be careful when soldering. We don't want too much solder to run down the sides here, because that will impede the insertion of the plug in its socket if you do that. Alright, we're sort of soldered in. I need to put a little bit more there. I see that now once I look through it on the viewfinder. Okay, we have our battery cable installed with a knot tied on the underside of the chassis to keep from pulling it out, and we have it cable clamped here for more security. I had to substitute an orange wire for the brown wire since I didn't have any brown. I could have sworn I had some brown, but I guess I didn't. But anyway, the electrons don't care what color the wire is. All they care about is the conductive material in the center there. All the colors do is make it easier on a technician to trace things out. And I bundled everything together with electrical tape and then put heat shrink tubing on top of the tape. And if you're wondering why we have different colors of heat shrink tubing, it's because I ran out of one color and had to go to something else. And I dug around and found a tube out of another battery radio that I think is a 1H5. The numbering is worn off of it, but it looks like a 1H5, so we're about ready to put some juice to this and see what takes place. Here's a crude battery eliminator that I hacked together using parts that I had on hand. I think I've got a video somewhere of it that I need to upload. It's one I did a long time ago and just never released it. Alright, we're plugged into the battery eliminator. Let's turn it on and see what happens. Just a little low-level hum from the speaker, and that's it. So we need to investigate. Alright, looking at the plate voltage where it goes into the audio output transformer, we have nothing. And when I check from that point to ground, we have a short. So now we need to find out what shorted. Well, I don't know what happened to the short, but it went away and the voltage is steadily climbing. We started at about 63 and it's gradually rising, and I bet what the trouble is, it's probably this electrolytic cap here that's probably trying to reform. Okay, our audio circuit is working. So when I touch the phono input lead, I get a buzz. Alright, we're up to almost 80 volts now. Okay, I'm connected to an antenna, actually a short clip lead, and I'm getting some static, which is a good sign.
God, Heavenly Father, I'm moving to your spirit, control my life and all the drama.
Find more deals.
Alright, we're playing, but we have some heavy distortion at higher volume, so let's check the control grid at the audio output tube. I bet it's going to be positive, which will indicate a leaky coupling capacitor. Alright, that black domino thing is the coupling capacitor, and I've got negative 4 volts there, so that may not be an issue.
When you enter the promo code Mike G, save big.
There's the capacitor right there, C19, a 680 mmF or picofarad in today's world, and that's probably a mica capacitor, so chances are it's still okay.
Promo code Mike G.
Welcome back, everyone.
Alright, I'm looking at the voltage on the AVC line. I'm getting negative 0.13 volts, and it doesn't change whenever I change the station. Now, the AVC is an automatic volume control circuit. Its purpose is to help prevent blasting, or should I say reduce the effects of it when you tune from a weaker station to a strong station. As in, you're tuned to a station that's a little weak, and you don't want to tune to a stronger station and get blasted out of the room with high volume levels, so that's what the AVC circuit does.
We live in an upside down world.
But yeah, what happens when you're tuned to a strong signal,
I don't either.
Negative voltage is produced on the AVC line that's applied to the grids of the converter and Iaf tubes, and that tells the tubes, hey, we don't need as much out of you on this one, but when tuned to a weaker station, then that voltage will go towards zero, and that tells the tubes, hey, I need you to conduct more. We need all the bump we can get out of you. And this 0.1 microfarad capacitor, that's your AVC filter, and if it becomes leaky, that can cause issues with the AVC circuit not functioning properly, and that can affect the gain of your receiver. And we have the AVC filter connected to my old school capacitor tester here, and yeah, this thing is, it's basically shorted. Even on the 20 volt scale, it's leaking like crazy, and of course the higher the voltage you apply to it, the more it leaks. So as far as this cap goes, it's had it. It's basically shorted. Alright, changing that AVC cap brought our AVC voltage up to, if the meter will stay on there, negative 0.23 volts. So that's a bit better. Here's the screen grid bypass capacitor on the converter tube, and if it becomes defective, it can cause all sorts of things, such as oscillation, and if it becomes leaky it can hog down the B plus voltage going to the screen grid. And this capacitor is, just like the AVC filter, very leaky, as you can see by the light staying on. When the light doesn't illuminate, that means it's a good capacitor. When the light just blinks, it means it's a bit leaky and needs to be replaced. When the light just stays on, it's very leaky and basically shorted. Okay, I replaced our screen bypass capacitor here, but it looks like our short on the B plus line has returned, as you can hear from the meter there. Okay, what was I saying? I thought I was recording and I wasn't. Okay, so there's the screen bypass capacitor replaced. And we still have a short here on the B plus line that is cropped back up. It's not in the power supply because I have the switch turned off, taking the power supply out of the circuit. So let me trace this back and see what's shorted. I wonder if it's this, try that again. I wonder if it's this electrolytic capacitor here that's on the B plus line. Let's cut it out and see. Alright, meter connected, and let's clip the capacitor and see if the short goes away. And it does not, but that needs to be replaced anyway, so what's shorted here? Okay, I think what we're going to have to do is unsolder these branch wires off of the switch here and see which leg is shorted, and then we'll know which direction to go in. Alright, it's not here on the line that goes to the audio output tube. Alright, it's here on this B plus line to the Iaf amplifier tube, which branches off and goes into the Iaf Transformers here. Okay, so just to clarify what we're doing, our 90 volts comes in on one side of the switch, and then whenever you turn the switch on, that makes the connection, and then the 90 volts branches off and goes several different directions, here to the audio output stage, back over here to the Iaf amplifier stage, which also provides voltage to the converter tube and the first audio and detector tube, and then we have another wire coming off of here, and I believe that goes up to the, well, probably to the neon indicator on the dial up there. So by removing these branches here, we were able to determine which area has the short, and we determine it's this branch that goes to the Iaf amplifier tube, and also goes into both Iaf transformers. So we have our, and back over here to the oscillator coil. So we have our meter clipped to the oscillator coil where that lead goes, and then the other end grounded to chassis, which is B minus. Right now the short has gone away, but if I press on this tube socket terminal, it comes back. So that's where the issue is. So I think we need to completely unsolder this tube socket terminal and see if there's maybe a strand of wire that's intermittently hanging down and touching the chassis or something. But we can't have that. We don't need any kind of intermittent short here. I think I found the problem. This red wire that goes up into the second Iaf transformer, I can see that the insulation has degraded some, and it's resting right up against this tab here, this terminal that is at ground, and that's where the trouble is. So you know what that means, don't you? That means these Iaf transformers have got to come out of here and be rewired. Now I could take the quick way out and just slip a piece of heat shrink tubing over the leads, but I really don't like doing things that way. And when I disconnected this first Iaf transformer, its lead started disintegrating, so yeah, that means both of them are going to have to be removed and dealt with. Just for fun, I'm testing this bypass electrolytic capacitor on the B plus line. It's supposed to be 10. It's reading 8.5. That's still pretty good considering how old this is. Now, let's check it for leakage. No, that's not bad. Bit leaky at 200 volts. The light's staying on a little long. Not horrible, but Here's a new 10 microfarad 250 volts. You can see how much smaller than it is than the 10 microfarad at 150 volt from 1939. Now let's check a new one for leakage. See how quick the light goes off on 20 volts, now on 200 volts. Quickly it goes off. So that capacitor has virtually no leakage. Okay, there's our new electrolytic capacitor installed. And you know, we could do this the sloppy way and maybe get it done a little quicker, but you know, I think when you restore one of these or even repair one just enough to get it working, you should put just as much care into your work as they did when they originally built the set. And I replaced this yellow wire that goes from the tube socket up here to the tone switch. I had to remove it to make it a little easier for me to solder this ground connection on the filter capacitor. And this old rubber wire, when you heat it up and start pulling on it, that's usually when the insulation starts disintegrating, and that's what happened here, so I just went ahead and replaced it. Okay, you notice how this red lead on the oscillator coil is dressed at an angle. We're about to replace that lead, and we're going to dress the new lead as close to how the original was as possible. This was probably done to make it look neater, and also they might not have wanted this lead coming in contact with something else that could cause some stray capacitance, which could lead to performance issues. So when rewiring something, it's always best to orient your new wires as close to how the originals were as possible. Okay, there's our wire. I have not soldered the end going to the tube socket because we still have several more things that need to go here. And once we get everything there, then we can resolder it. Well, isn't this just freaking lovely? Wiring on the output transformer was kind of ragged, so I was going to rewire it. So I cut enough of the wire off to strip and attach my new wire to and run heat shrink tubing over it. And this cloth wire is difficult to strip, and it's not attached very well on this output transformer. It's only held on with paper. So I painstakingly get the wire stripped, attach everything, and I said, well, I better check this winding for continuity before I attach everything, resolder the wires, and I'll be darned if the darn winding is open. So now I'm going to have to find another output transformer somewhere, and I believe the impedance of these battery tubes is different than what's used in AC/DC type sets, so that may be a problem. We may just have to come up with whatever we can find, and the tube can just be happy with it. Yep, that's where it broke. Right flush with where this little fine winding goes inside the transformer. Now, of course, newer production transformers, this would all be potted in place and more secure, but all that's holding this was this wrap of paper, and after 80 years, even that bond is not as secure as it used to be, so we're just going to have to find another transformer somewhere. Yeah, me trying to make things nice and pretty, and this is what I wind up doing. Okay, I did some looking in the tubes for battery radios. Indeed, want to see a higher impedance load than what you'd find in your average AC operated 5-tube set, etc. You know, I think a regular output transformer would work, but the performance might not be the best. I was reading online, and some people suggested a Bogan matching transformer for PA use, and that particular transformer they suggested has many different taps on it that will work on a variety of different load requirements, so might end up trying one of them. At least this particular output transformer is mounted on the speaker in such a way that I can drill it out without having to worry about the drill bit puncturing the cone, and if something happens, I have to mount a transformer to the chassis, I can put it right here. So, it won't be it's just a small setback, but in the meantime, we'll continue with the wiring replacement and the capacitor replacement, and then we'll be ready whenever I find an output transformer. Okay, for the exception of the Iaf transformers, we have everything that needs to be rewired, and here's our phono jack rewired. I just simply ran new wiring with heat shrink tubing over the wiring and a cable clamp to hold everything in place, and we have it connected to its correct place under the chassis. Now we need to remove the Iaf transformers. Oh, and one other thing, the cloth covered wire, what little it was, is in on the antenna coil and tuning condenser. It's still in relatively good shape, and I'm not messing with that. And I had to replace the audio wire going to the grid of the first audio and detector tube. It was all crumbling inside of this spring that they have it running through, and if you're wondering why they do that, that spring is to offer shielding to help prevent hum pickup. So we have that corrected. Alright, the Iaf transformers, we need to get those out, so the first thing we need to do is unsolder the respective wires from where they connect, and then the transformer is physically held to the chassis with these clips here. We'll have to squeeze these tabs together, and then we should be able to pull the Iaf transformer off the chassis. Alright, here we are disconnected. Red is the B+ input voltage, which goes back over here. The blue connects to the plate of the mixer tube right there. The black connects back here to our AVC point right there, and then the green up top connects to the top cap of the Iaf amplifier tube. Alright, here we are removed, and these clips are a little bit tricky to squeeze together and pull out, but we got it out. Now I need to make a mark on this side of the can so I can orient it back in the chassis the same way in which it came out. This side will be towards the mixer tube. Right there's our little mark, and our side with the red wiring on it goes towards that mark. Now we need to cut this grid cap off. Might as well just cut it off because we're going to be rewiring it anyway, and then once we do that, we'll simply push down on this clip here like that, and then you can slide the clip out of the hole there, and once the clip is removed, the innards of the Iaf transformers should just slide right on out of here. And here's the innards of the Iaf transformer. Now, you want to be very careful here and make sure you don't break any of these fine wires. This is not as fine a wire as what's used on the output transformer, but it's still something we don't want to break. So, you want to carefully unsolder each one, and it might even be just best just to clip, not even try to unsolder the wires. Just clip each one off close to the terminal and then solder the new wires onto that, and then you make sure you don't accidentally break one of these fine wires off. Okay, we now have our 4 wires soldered in place, and of course this green wire will have to run up through the hole in the top of the Iaf transformer, and then we'll orient this assembly back in the can just like it came out and put it back in the chassis. And then, of course, we'll have to trim our leads to the proper length and then strip them and connect them to our respective terminals, and that should take care of Iaf transformer number 1. Okay, before we clip this in, it'd be a good time to get an approximation of how long the leads need to be for their respective terminals, and then we'll clip them off and then slide the transformer back out, strip the wires, mount the transformer back to the chassis, and then solder everything in place. Alright, here are our wires trimmed, stripped, and tinned, and for the wires connected to the bottom of the chassis, I used solid wire just like they did from the factory, and for the one going to the grid cap on top of the tube, I used a stranded wire because that wire will come near being moved around if the tube is replaced, and we want something that won't be as likely to break under pressure. Oh, and one other thing, when you're putting the Iaf transformer back together, you want to make sure these two little alignment posts that you see here, made up with the holes in the top of the Iaf transformer, and go through them. That way the actual insides of the can will be in the proper position, and you can get to the alignment screws more easily to align this. And then to reinstall, you just align the clips up with the holes in the board and then press down firmly on the Iaf transformer, and it should clip into place. Now would be a good time to use my meter and make sure these windings still have continuity. Last thing I want is to connect all this and then find out that we have an open winding. Okay, here we are all connected except for the B+ wire. I haven't soldered all that up yet because I don't want to do that until we do the other Iaf transformer. And yeah, you want to keep your leads as short as possible on these. You don't want a bunch of extra lead just running willy-nilly under the chassis, because that can really tick off the circuit and cause all kind of problems. So yeah, just keep your leads as short as you can. Alright, here's our grid cap wire, and just to be on the safe side, I ran a little piece of heat shrink tubing over it where it enters into the Iaf transformer. That's because many times I've seen the insulation worn off of this particular wire where it enters the Iaf transformer. And granted, this insulation on this newer wire is better than what was on the older wire, but just to give it a little more protection, I just put a little piece of heat shrink tubing over it. Now here's our grid cap connector, and we need to get this old wire out of there. And you see they have it crimped in place, so I need to get a small screwdriver and work that up, and then we'll desolder it and then slip the old wire out, slip the new wire in, crimp it down, and solder it. Now, when working on these, I like to mount the grid cap on a dud tube, and then that makes it easier for me to work on this. What we do is simply loosen up the clip, place this cap on a dud tube, hold the wire with a pair of pliers while heating the solder, and once the solder heats up, you should be able to pull the wire clean out. And for opening up those crimps and prying apart wire connections and such stuff as that, this little bitty screwdriver comes in handy for that. Okay, don't focus while that's even worse. But anyway, we have the wire crimped. Now all we have to do is solder it, and we'll be in good shape. Okay, there it is, soldered in place, and I left this lead a bit long on purpose, so you can insert both types of tubes in here. They made the short ones later on, like this one. This is a replacement. I think this one originally had the tall tubes like this one. So you can use a tall or a short tube, and there's still enough wire linked here to allow you to connect the grid cap. I know on some sets, the wire's not long enough, and you have to use the type of tube that came in it, or either extend the lead. Okay, now it's time to do the second Iaf transformer, and the only difference is this one has 5 wires on it instead of 4. So there's either a tap on the winding or some extra components inside of this transformer. Have to look at the schematic and see. Well, it don't look like any extra windings, so possibly some of these other components here are inside the can. So we have black, green, red, and blue, just like on the other one. Okay, this one's a little different from the schematic. This extra wire is actually a screen grid tap on the Iaf amplifier tube, where on the schematic they show the screen grid getting its voltage direct from B+, but on this set, the screen voltage is from a tap on the Iaf transformer. Here we are opened up. Okay, we have our second Iaf fixed up and put back in the radio, and I've gone over everything. I think everything is correct. I'm about ready to connect a test speaker to this and see if it either plays or messes up. And no more B+ to ground short. That's good. And the rest of the resistors, they're close enough within spec that we can leave them alone. The only components I have not checked are replaced are these components in the blinker circuit, which is nothing more than the bulb itself, a resistor, and a capacitor. And if this capacitor is like the rest of them, it'll be extremely leaky, but I'm really not too worried about the blinker right now. That'll probably be the last thing we address. Alright, I found a speaker with a transformer attached. It came out of one of those El Cheapo Delmonico little Japanese-made consulate stereos from the 60s. I'm sure some of you remember them. They cost less than $100 and they were brand new. They were probably sold from about 62 up until about 68 or so. They were basically just a 5-tube AM radio chassis with a separate amplifier stage to accommodate the stereo phonograph. So basically just a table radio in a console cabinet. I had one that's probably going to get parted out, so we'll just use this for right now. Alright, let's power it up and see what happens.
In the show, Zach Martin injured and out of this ball game now.
Well, I must have did something right. Heck, I didn't even manage to move the tuning condenser during all of this.
Those are a couple injuries. One of them Anderson off at the line. We call them Bucks now, Dave. You know, like all these nicknames. There you go.
And I'm getting some distance reception here, and it's only, what time is it? About 10 minutes till 5, not even dark yet, and all we have on it for an antenna is this clip lead, so it's pretty impressive. Well, we're now connected to a little bit longer antenna.
Unique sports betting experience featuring live stream. Very large of where the tree is supposed to be, and people are.
Without limit, with the simple brilliance of Thomas' design.
Yeah, this thing, when you turn it past about a quarter of the way up, it starts distorting, and that's because this output transformer is not optimum for this particular audio output tube.
The way you see the world.
British discount wine and liquor that's helped you celebrate for more than 30 years.
It gets loud, it just distorts.
Prices on wine and liquor in East Mississippi and West.
Nobody. We try to, but don't nobody seem to know.
And EWTN Radio, and carried across the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. To follow up on any of the guests or information presented,
I think that's the Catholic radio station out of New Orleans.
AveMariaRadio.net.
That's not bad.
MARIA Radio.net. To listen to this or any other edition of Cresta in the Afternoon, visit the audio archives at AveMariaRadio.net. Or to order a
Well, this is impressive. I think after we touch the alignment up on this and get it going, this thing will be a hot performer. Yeah, I got a little Michael Jackson slipping in on us.
Studio, a radio.com station.
Okay, Michael Jackson, that was on WWWL out of New Orleans.
My name was high.
Alright, here's our blinker circuit. There's nothing really much to this. Our B plus comes in at the top of this 3.9 meg ohm resistor. And then in series with that resistor, we have a 0.1 microfarad capacitor with the bottom end of that capacitor going to B minus. And then the bulb is wired in parallel with the capacitor. Alright, I've got 82 volts going into that resistor. Coming out of that resistor, we only have 11 volts. And 11 volts is not going to let that lamp fire, so either what's happening, either this resistor has gone way up in value, or this 0.1 microfarad capacitor is very leaky, and why should I think it wouldn't be? All the rest of them have been. So let's check those components. That resistor is reading 5.4 meg. It's supposed to be 3.9 meg. It's out of tolerance, but I don't think it's out enough to choke it down that much. So let's get that capacitor out and check it. Alright, testing the capacitor for leakage. Oh yeah, just like the rest of them. Alright, changing that capacitor got us back flashing. Okay, we had 11 volts on the other side of that resistor before. Now we have 55. That's still a bit low. And my meter is loading this down and not letting the bulb flash. But yeah, let's change that resistor to a 3.9 meg or something thereabouts and see if that'll get us fully in operation. Okay, that brought us up to 60 volts. Not a lot of increase, but at least our components are within spec now. I think that's WSM coming in a little bit high, but not bad considering. Well, here we go again. I decided to mount our Japanese transformer on here, and in an effort to make things neat, tried to clean off all this crap from the lugs where they think they have to have 10 things on each lug. And here we go, got another one broken off, about to fall off. So I'm going to look for another transformer. This one can be fixed, I don't know, but I'm going to look for another transformer, and if there's crap on the lugs on that one, we can just do what I call butt soldering. Just put the darn wire up on it and heat it and let it go. Okay, I managed to get it shoved back up in there, but it's not going to take any rough treatment, which it shouldn't receive any rough treatment as long as it's mounted in the radio. And this is basically just something to do until I can find a more suitable transformer.
If you may.
Well, I can tell you this original speaker from 1940 or whenever sounds better than the cheapo Japanese speaker from 1960 whatever, but
between saving it and investing it in good mutual funds. Now here's the trick, Ray. Just in talking to you, this is probably your...
And it does acceptable the way it is. I think it would do better with the right transformer.
Your job is not to do what I say or Anthony says.
Or this will have to do for now.
Your job is to learn enough about the mutual funds that you get comfortable with it, and you decide.
Bracket. In 1873, 2,000 Memphians died of yellow fever. In another 1878 outbreak, fine.
He's working for Bob.
I guess tomorrow we'll do an alignment on this, and then this thing ought to be ready to go. Wonder what this is. Well, I should have known that was just bumper music for some talk program.
We do that every day.
Anywhere, right? Special.
Jonas, good job.
Now, as far as this blinker, I can add another capacitor, put another 0.1 in there, effectively making the capacitance 0.2, and the blinking will slow down, because the bigger the capacitor, the longer it takes it to charge, and the longer it takes it to charge, the less frequent the lamp will blink. Alright, here's a 0.2 capacitor, put in parallel with the 0.1, giving us 0.3. And notice when I take it out of the circuit, it starts blinking faster. So if you have one of these sets and don't want the bulb to blink as rapidly, just put a bigger capacitor in it, and that'll make it blink less frequent. KMOX.
Jill? Well, that lying detective.
And we give thanks for the vaccines and therapies that will soon end the pandemic. Mr. Trump also thanking the men and women who serve in the armed forces. In California, reporting a record number of cases.
Our over-modulated gospel station.
Infections. Also at srnnews.com, Senate Republicans say the only thing standing in the way of a potential Biden judicial nominations that could impose a radical agenda on the federal courts are the senators there now. Bob Agnew explains.
Senator Joni Ernst tells the Salem Radio Network it will take Republicans on the Judiciary Committee to serve as what she calls a firewall against potential Biden.
Radio studios. And sitting in for Jason and Mike. Initial testing. The Texans.
The Atlanta police shooting death of Rayshard Brooks in a Wendy's parking lot. The Courier's family.
Okay, about ready to call it a day, and tomorrow we'll align this thing, and that ought to take care of it. Okay, both the signal generator and radio have warmed up for about 20 minutes. Signal generator set to 455 kilocycles. Low side of the generator connected to chassis. High side connected to the grid cap of the 1A7 tube through a 0.01 microfarad cap. And as per the instructions, the dial tuned to a quiet spot between 550 and 750. And I've already tested the trimmer screws to make sure they're not hot before I go sticking my metal screwdriver down in here. And we'll simply peak these 4 trimmers for maximum output. That one was way off. Alright, let's turn our signal generator output down some. And let's do number 2 here. That one was really off. Turn the output down some more. Yeah, this should wake it up. Turn the output down some more. And then do the last one. Alright, now we'll go back through, turn the output down even more, and I'll go back through and peak these out for maximum. Now we need to make sure our dial pointer is in the correct position, straight that way, and straight that way, so that looks good. Now we need to set our dial and signal generator to 1500. And move our hot signal generator lead over to the antenna lead and substitute the 0.01 capacitor for a 250 microfarad or picofarad. Now we have the generator and the radio set to 1500, and they want us to peak the two tremors on the condenser for maximum. And we can tell the oscillator's off on this set because 1450's bleeding through a little bit. And now I'm adjusting the oscillator tremor. That's the smallest of the two sections of the tuning condenser. That's the wrong way. Okay, should be getting a tone right about there. And now they want you to tune the generator and the radio to 600 and adjust this oscillator coil snug here for maximum. And then you have to alternate back and forth between 1500 and 600 until you get the dial accurate. Okay, I went to 600, dialed that in with the oscillator coil, went back to 1500, was able to dial that in with the tremor on the condenser. Now let's set the generator back to 6. There we go. Okay, 600 is a little high, so we need to tweak on this coil a little more. Okay. That's about right, and let's go back to 1500 and see if it's where it's supposed to be. Close, but just a little off, so let's do it again. Put it about right there, and we'll adjust our tremor for maximum. Alright, now back to 600. And the battery's running dead, so I'm not going to show this whole back and forth process, but you get the idea. 1500, that looks pretty much right on, and 600, so that looks to be right on. So that should take care of the alignment of this radio. Alright, there's our classic country station at 1490 that's hard to pick up. And we have thunderstorms in the area, so that's really not helping us any. We could get a lot more stations if there wasn't all the noise and interference and crap.
Hey, guard, I've heard the nuts.
There's a distant station. There's a distant station. It's about 12 o'clock in the afternoon here.
And that's what the law says you have to do.
Hear all that noise? If that wasn't there, we might could pick up something. I think that's 670, just barely there. The other one it's hard to get, but with all the noise, it's kind of hard to pick it out. Okay, I think this one's about ready to go back in the cabinet. Yeah, this is about the only station I can get in the daytime that I can stomach in this part of the country. And the only way I can get it is out here in the shop with an external antenna running out the shop window. Okay, we're back together. It's about 3:45 in the afternoon.
We're going to take a break, and we're going to come back, and we're going to hear what happened.
And we're already getting some
And also,
distant stations.
And,
I'm in the field. Security's having a huge holiday sale. Right now you can get 50%. 38-17 win over Vanderbilt. Through 7 games, the Florida Gators have scored 313 points. That is the third most in college football history. BYU might not make the college football playoff, but at 9-0, quarterback Zach Wilson has
30. I have no idea what that station is.
This is the weekend. This is it. You're basically done after this.
Te propongo comenzar por República Dominicana, la Lidón de República Dominicana.
Question a little bit more, we get that same kind of answer. How dare you ask me that?
Offensive. Not.
Difference maker.
Like any good 6-year-old, Blaze knows what his favorite animal is.
Squirrel.
And it's easy to see why.
But if you want to look back and say, okay, the last 4 years, we've had a lot.
Reward yourself.
Probably WWL 870.
Credit card from Metairie Bank.
Yeah, that would have to be. Now, I can tell you, based on how the radio reacted with the signal generator, it's going to be more sensitive on the higher end of the dial than the lower end, but that's normal. Now, if I really wanted to listen to a distant station on the lower end, I could just adjust the antenna trimmer for that end of the dial, but really nothing down that low that I care to listen to, and as long as I can get WSM at night, I should be okay, and I think this will do that without any problem when it gets a little bit later.
Only the best craftsmen can make them come alive.
Everything is alright. Everything is okay. Everything is all good.
Lance Peterson making a mistake in tripling down on Carson. Absolutely. So Carson went.
The only other thing electronically I could stand to do would be to replace the output transformer with something more suitable, but this one's working well enough that I'm not really in any hurry to do that.
And you look at the landscape. This guy has been,
If you will. Radio 1080 TRLD.
Difference maker brought to you by the North Texas Food Bank. You know someone that's making a difference? 60-day unconditional money.
Tres honrones o los padres de San.
So when an answer thanks you. We can help with expenses health insurance doesn't cover. Learn more at Aflac.com.
And we welcome all of you back in the comeback of the week. South Carolina.
How dare we? Investors keep their retirement funds safe and sound.
And making these arrangements this way. I mean, it's just kind of, hey, you're in the SEC, and with COVID.
Yeah. You know, we know the quality of radio in my area is not that great, and just watched Shango's video about the oldies station. It's the AM oldies station. It's reverting back to classical music, and I will have to agree that's one of the more that ranks right up there at the top of the list of boneheaded decisions that are have been made by radio station owners. I don't think the average listener or connoisseur of classical music is going to be tuning into lo-fi, static-filled AM radio to listen to such music. I think he'd have been better off just leaving it like it was with the oldies format. And I really wish somebody in my area would do the same thing with one of these AM stations, is put an oldies format on it instead of the dull talk and sports format that's really nothing to it anymore, because all of the big name talk and sports talk show hosts have moved to the 2 or 3 different talk stations that we have on FM now. So
I think that
pretty much on AM what's left is Dave Ramsey and Mike Gallagher and some sports shows, and that's it.
I just think in
City of Rexall can find
this is a station out of Picayune, Mississippi.
And save you hundreds on your Part D plan. With open enrollment going on now through December 7th, now is the time to check your plan. Because once you choose a plan, you're tied to it for a year. Let City Rexall Drugstore, located at 349 South Main Street in Picayune, help you choose the Medicare prescription drug plan that's right for you. And save you money next year. City Rexall, more than just a drugstore.
It's trying to fade out on me, but if this sounds live and local,
Jimmy and Dixie Martin. Turning now to the local and area news, Infinity Science Center in Hancock County will be open on the weekend.
See, this is the kind of radio stations that are needed, the old school kind that are still live and local and have news and etc., not the canned crap from 5,000 miles away that's heard on zillions of stations across the country.
These deaths occurred between August the 17th and November the 25th. Total COVID-19. Orange, Leonard, age 79 of Picayune, formerly of Algiers, Louisiana, will be.
Yeah, it's after dark. We now got some Neil Diamond going on here. And another station playing the same Neil Diamond song, probably getting their programming from the same feed. Yep. That was 1290 we were just tuned to. This one's probably this weaker one's probably the station out of, I don't know, maybe Tuscaloosa.
Amazing.
Get the chance and I can't help you.
I'm going to lead off Ramsey Show. Copy your beat. What happened? You would.
En la que lee el juego le va a venir.
Yeah, where's WSM? There they are, starting to come in.
It
seems like LA is on stay-at-home lockdown, according to this.
The Wall Street Journal reports the first flights today.
What I just heard.
In LA, and with more on the national picture, correspondent Adriana Diaz.
Thanksgiving Day, hospitalizations nationwide hit a record high of more than 90,000 people. 32 states saw increases in new daily COVID cases, with Pennsylvania, Arkansas, and Massachusetts breaking records.
New York spiking again, too. In years past, before the rise of online shopping and the pandemic, we used to talk about mad crowds and doorbuster bargains on the so-called Friday after Thanksgiving. Well, this year, not so much.
We were a little bit
We've got some Anne Murray in the background there.
First and 15 and
President Trump appointee wrote, charges require specific allegations.
Friday, from the Geico Fox.
Toilet paper exposed to rodents. Send them packing the most humane way with plug-in, pest-free.
Thousand Oaks Drive at Jones Maltzberger, as well as at Rigby Avenue and South Zarzamora Street. Shannon Sampson, News Radio 1200 WOAI. This report is sponsored by Buy Your Honda Your Way at Hill Country Honda.
The Happy Honda Day sales event is at Hill Country Honda, hillcountryhonda.com.
Online or on the lot. Save with special holiday pricing on over 400.
Esta bonita noche, licenciado. Pues fíjate que en nosocomios.
Working from home. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on radio.com or the radio.com app. Download it today. Dell Technologies just announced.
Posting 2 days worth of coronavirus data as well. That's why the website is showing 17,000 new cases. All the figures released this afternoon.
Probably WLW.
Reporting. Staffing remains an issue at hospitals in Ohio as the pandemic spread is affecting the treatment of the virus.
COVID patients without completely overwhelming their staff. Right now, Health Collaborative reports their hospitals in Region 6 are down to 71% capacity. Had been as high as 95% 2 weeks ago. ICU capacity is at 80%. That's the lowest it's been this month. I'm Brian Combs, News Radio 700 WLW.
From Jack Crumley. Our next update at 8:30. Breaking news anytime. News Radio 700 WLW.
This report is sponsored by...
Okay, WSM, where are you? We can't conclude this video without getting a good strong signal on 650 now. Ah, there it's coming in.
That doesn't make him somehow...
I guess out of all the nighttime DX that comes in, 1200 WOAI is the most consistent and the most powerful.
The big J on my chest today, but that's...
It comes in about as good as a local station.
Megan Kelly for a second. It doesn't make sense.
And I think this is 1090 KAAY out of Little Rock. 50,000 watt gospel station. They usually come in fairly well. Sounds like they're having some trouble tonight. Okay, WSM starting to come in a little stronger.
DMA award winners. Oh, it's great to have them on the Opry stage. Well, that Opry band is so good, huh, too?
I'm sure this radio tuned in that station some whenever it was younger.
On the guitar, that's Mike Noble. On the drums, he's a member of the Musicians Hall of Fame. That's Eddie Baird. We got Larry Paxton on the bass guitar. Kerry Marks on the guitar. He's our band leader. Doug Greaves on the lead guitar. And a member of the Steel Guitar Hall of Fame in the front earlier in that set was Mr. Tommy White. Well, Bavarian Beer House at Opry Mills is...
All right, I think that's probably a good enough place to cut it. I'm sure you're past bored with me scanning the band on this radio, so we'll stop it here and have something else interesting for you a little bit later.